Hello everyone, you are listening to the Untapped Mana podcast. I'm your host, Palmer Snell, and I hope you can join me today as we dive into the wonderful world of Magic the Gathering. So today is the day, it is the day that Fallout releases. We've all been hyped for this. It got announced a long time ago, but it's finally out. And as you're listening to this, I actually have an unboxing of the Mutant Menace Pre-Con Commander deck from this set on my YouTube and a link on my Instagram. This is a really cool set. I loved opening the Commander deck. I actually couldn't get too many of the collector packs. Hopefully I'll get some in the future. They were allocated heavily. Maybe one day I'll get them, but it's kind of a throw up in the air right now. But I do at least have the Mutant Menace unboxing video up right now on my YouTube. Definitely check that out. Some crazy cards in that deck. I'm going to get some gameplay with it in the next couple, hopefully, days. Might be a week. Depends on how everything goes. So very excited for that. But kind of switching topics, I'll also be talking about the brand new card game, Star Wars Unlimited. I know it's not Magic. You might be freaking out. But I'm going to have a little topic, kind of mini segment about it. And I posted a video on my YouTube. Hopefully it's up. I was having some problems with it earlier. But I'm going to be calling this the Untapped TCG. I'll tell you when you can skip to if you don't want to listen to it. But I'm going to be talking about a little bit of this card game just because it's so cool. And it relates to the card game community and maybe how it draws focus from other players who play Magic maybe away. So it's something that's kind of to do with Magic, but not really. But I want to talk about it. It's a really fun game. I have some openings I have planned, and I've got some pretty cool cards. So pretty excited about that. And I got two more things today, which kind of relates to the Fallout. So, you just bought a pre-con. Now what? So I want to be talking about the best ways to transport your cards to your local game store to play on your Friday night Commander nights, or just to standard events, or anything in general. Mostly I play Commander, so it's going to be based around Commander. But relating to that, I'll also be talking about the best brands to protect your cards in Magic. So if you're ready, then sit back, relax, grab a bag of popcorn, and enjoy the show. So jumping right into things, we have the Fallout release, which is today, March 8th, 2024. Couple notes to go over just for the full release, rules, mechanics, stuff like that. So for some notes, I do have that this set with the PIP, which is PIP, is the set code, is permitted in Commander, Legacy, and Vintage formats. And then any previously printed cards, like, for example, Explore is in this one of my Commander decks. It is a card that was printed before, just different art. So if it has the PIP set code, but is a previously printed card, is also legal for any format where the card with the same name is printed. So if you want to change out arts, you can do that with no penalty. So we've talked about the new mechanics before. So starting off is the rad counter. So the rad counters are this radiation kind of based in the wastelands. You get radiation poisoning, stuff like that. Well, the more rad counters you have, the worse you'll be off. Because though some people think that radiation has plenty of benefits, it really doesn't in most factors of Magic, because at the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, you will mill cards equal to the number of rad counters you have, and then you'll lose life and then remove a number of rad counters from yourself equal to the number of non-land cards you milled that way. So for example, we have Megaton's Fate. It's a 5 colorless, 1 red sorcery. You choose one. Disarm, destroy target artifact, create 4 treasure tokens, or Detonate. Megatron's Fate deals 8 damage to each creature. Each player gets 4 rad counters. So rad counters are a kind of counter that a player can have. Of course, they're not associated with any specific permanents. They are just happen with different cards. But you can keep track of how many you have with the special new tokens that come in collector packs and in the pre-constructed pre-con decks. So this is taken right off of Magic the Gathering. It's magic.wizards.com/news. So there is an inherent triggered ability associated with having rad counters. This triggered ability has no source and is controlled by the active player. The full text of this ability is at the beginning of the pre-combat main phase of a player with rad counters. That player mills cards equal to the number of rad counters they have. For each non-land card milled this way, that player loses 1 life and removes 1 rad counter from themselves. In a game using the shared team turns options such as Archenemy or Two-Headed Giant, the inherent triggered ability associated with rad counters triggers once for each player on the active team that has rad counters. Each instance of that ability is controlled by one of those players. Any effects such as Proliferate that interact with the counters a player gets, has, or loses can interact with rad counters. The cards milled all at once, which means that it triggers the ability whenever one or more non-land cards are milled, will trigger exactly once as long as at least one non-land card was milled. And if a player has fewer cards remaining in their library than the number of rad counters they have when the triggered ability resolves, they'll mill as many cards as they can. But it won't cause them to lose the game until the next time they have to draw. So following the rad counters, we have the brand new Junk token, and the card I have in front of me is Junk Jet, which is a one colorless, one red artifact. When it enters the battlefield, create a Junk token, which is an artifact with tap, sacrifice this artifact, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn, but you only activate it as a sorcery. And then there's also a couple other things that this certain card has, but we're focusing more on the Junk artifact token. So you cannot sacrifice a Junk token to pay multiple costs. For example, you can't sacrifice a Junk token to activate its own ability and also activate a second ability of what has created the Junk token. You pay all costs and follow all normal timing rules for card played from exile with a Junk token's ability. For example, if the exiled card is a land card, you may play it only during your main phase while the stack is empty. And some spells and abilities that create Junk tokens may require targets. If each target chosen is illegal, as that spell or ability tries to resolve, it won't resolve and none of its effects will happen. You won't create any Junk tokens. So going into a returning mechanic, which I actually made a mistake and said that it was a brand new mechanic in a prior episode, is the energy mechanic. This first came out in Kaladesh. I did say this was the first time it came out. It was a miswording. I didn't do my research as well as I thought I did, but there's so many different things in Magic, so give me some grace on that. But it is returning in this set. It is E, the energy symbol, and it represents one energy counter. Also looks like a pentagon with like a lightning bolt through it. That's almost the best way that I can describe it. Energy counters are a kind of counter that a player may have that are not associated with any specific permanence. They just happen to be on tons of different cards, so you can proliferate it. That is something you can do, which is nice. But the way to keep track of it is using a dice, using pens, paper. However, the table agrees that you will keep track of it as long as everyone knows, because you use energy counters to pay costs. So it is important that each person knows how it works, because you don't want any discrepancies on your table. So some triggered abilities state that you may pay a certain amount of energy. You can't pay that amount multiple times to multiply the effect, and you simply choose whether or not you pay the amount as the ability resolves. Some triggered abilities also state that you may pay a certain amount of energy to describe an effect that happens if you do. In that case, no player may take actions to try and stop the ability's effect after you make your choice. If the payment is followed by the phrase "when you do," then you'll choose any targets for that reflective triggered ability and put it on the stack before players can take action. And if a spell or ability with one or more targets states that you may pay some amount of energy, and each permanent that targets becomes an illegal target, that spell or ability won't resolve. You can't pay any energy even if you want to. And finally, some spells and abilities give you energy, may require targets. Each target is chosen. If each target chosen is an illegal target, as that spell or ability tries to resolve, it won't resolve. You won't get any kind of energy from that ability. But actually I lied. There's one more, and this is my favorite, is that the energy counters are unlike mana, where different steps, they do not go away. So as steps, phases, or turns, or effects that add any type of mana, anything happens like that, you don't get energy counters, but you don't lose them. So that is very nice. You can rack them up, spend them how you want. They don't go away. Another mechanic I've talked about a lot, which is returning, which I feel like everybody knows, is Proliferate. One of my personal favorite mechanics. You choose any kind of permanent that has a counter, including ones controlled by your opponents, and you can choose what has counters, what counters, basically +1/+1 counters, stuff like that. You can just add another one. So it's really cool. It's really good for toxic decks. So if you give someone a toxic counter, you can proliferate to then give you more toxic counters, which then helps you win the game faster, because all your opponents are doing are just gaining more toxic counters. So it can be really scary and deadly. Not for you unless you choose to proliferate your own, which I don't know why you would do that, but sometimes people do, because why not? But mostly people use it for +1/+1 counters, and it's a good way to politic on the table, because if you're able to proliferate not only yours but other people's +1/+1 counters, then you can say, hey, don't attack me, I'll throw you some more, do damage to other players. So good way to politic. One of my favorite parts of Magic is not even in the rules, give or take, but it is politicking your way through to win the game. And some spells or abilities that cause you to proliferate may require targets. If each target chosen is, of course, an illegal target, as that spell or ability tries to resolve, it won't resolve and you won't proliferate. So as with all these mechanics, if something becomes illegal, then it just will not happen. Two more returning mechanics are the quest counters and the squad ability. So the quest counters are just a type of counter for certain cards. They don't have any rules behind them. It's a way to give you different counters. And the squad mechanic allows you to pay an extra cost. So, for example, the Gary clone is squad 2, so you may pay, as you cast this card, you may pay an additional 2 any number of times. When the creature enters the battlefield, create that many token copies for how much you paid. So, for example, if you pay 4, you get to create the Gary clone, you cast it, and then you make 2 token copies. So in total, you'll have 3. So squad worked a lot with the 40k decks. It's going to happen with the kind of cloning card, shape-shifting, lots of stuff like that. It's a cool mechanic, but you got to have the mana to do so. And most of the time, it can be really pricey if you want to get more things on the board. So we're going to head into our next segment, Star Wars Unlimited. Skip to 15 minutes if you'd like to not hear about it. For now, let's just jump right into it. So Star Wars Unlimited, the brand new card game from Fantasy Flight Games. I've played in the pre-release. I've played with the pre-constructed decks. I've opened probably about a box and a half, maybe 2 boxes now. I'm in love with this game. This game's a lot of fun. I also managed to pull the $500 Sabine Wren Showcase Hyperspace Foil craziness. The chances of getting it were 1 in 12 boxes. And so that is just flippin' wild. I still can't believe I pulled it. I opened the pack and I almost crapped myself because I was holding something that could have paid for a couple of my college classes, which I just find unbelievable. So, yes, there's a lot of cool money cards in the game, but it actually releases today, March 8th, 2024. So now we'll know what the card markets look like. Those were just a kind of pre-idea of what the market might look like. But aside from all the money and math related to that, the card game itself is really cool, and it plays super different than many other games. But the developers of the game said that they're not trying to reinvent the wheel. That is exactly what they said. They said they're taking their favorite mechanics from other card games and putting it all into one to make one major card game, which I think is really cool. That they're not trying to say they're going to make a new card game, but they're just going to take their favorite things from others and make it into their own. So, using the Star Wars brand, of course, there's so much you can do with characters, with lore. There's so many different things that I've seen while opening the cards that it's like, whoa, that's in there. Like, for example, Bendu. So Bendu is a character from the Rebels TV show, and he makes an appearance as a rare character. It's almost like the legend rule, where they have a little symbol next to their name, which is unique, which means that you cannot have more than one unique of the same name on the board. So I can't have 2 Bendus on the board at the same time, but it's still really cool to get those characters. There's so many characters in this first set, which is called Spark of the Rebellion, there's everything from sequels to prequels to Clone Wars to the Galactic Civil War, all the different characters. Some are just art, like the Mandalorian is showcased on one art, but it doesn't have its certain card yet, but I know it is announced for the next set. This game is really cool. I really have a deep interest in it. I'm going to be playing it personally, so let me know in the comments, either on the YouTube, if you're watching it there, or head on over to my Instagram. I made a post about it because there is an unboxing video on the channel now as I'm recording this. It did finally post. So if you enjoy it, put in the comments, let me know, give me some honest feedback, because I know this show is specifically about Magic, but if we can have a segment here and there just about different card games, I think that'd be really cool. Personally, I play Pokemon as well, so we can have 3 different maybe once a month I throw in a card game that's not Magic related, just for some different audience views and just to show off what I do besides Magic. So if you really like the game, let me know. I can put some gameplay on the channel. I have more unboxings that I can do. showcase some of my cards. I will say Game Genic makes all of the products for like deck boxes and stuff, and they're really, really nice. So I have one in front of me that has to do with Darth Vader and the Death Star. And so you put your deck in, and then there's a token slot behind you that is a little plastic thing and opens up where you can put your tokens in. And they have these really nice acrylic tokens. Very good stuff. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you want to see more. But for now, let's get back to Magic. A big thank you to Zeke's Comics and Games for sponsoring the show. Zeke's is a comic shop in Washington, Illinois that has so much to offer in the realm of hobbies, Pokemon, Games Workshop, D&D, and so much more, including Magic product. I'm here and I'll tell you some information. Not yet, but in the near future we will have a promo code on this channel, so stay in tune for when Magic product releases, and we can get you some discounts if you order through Zeke's. They ship, they have an online shop, and a TCG player store, all found in my link tree in the bio in my Instagram. Definitely go check that out, or go to linktr.ee/untappedmanashow.com. There you can also find all my socials and other ways to listen to me. For now, let's get back to the episode. So like I said in the beginning, I want to dive into the best way to bring your cards and your product to your local game stores for playing. This is not something we've really talked about before, but it's something that I love, and I just like having sleeves and deck boxes and token carriers. So let's talk about what the best way to transport cards to your local game store is. So personally, this is all going to be personally, I haven't like taken a poll or anything, but personally, I think the best way to bring it is either, I have a camera bag, which is what I use, so you can get those off Amazon, go to camera stores. They have all the different compartments for like lenses and stuff, and they fit perfectly for your deck boxes. Or you can go to Lowe's or Home Depot, any of those kind of crap stores, and you can get these giant like nail holders that are for like equipment and stuff, and those can actually fit your cards in. The downside of those, in my opinion, is that you cannot fit deck boxes. But some people don't like having multiple deck boxes. I personally love having a deck box. I put stickers on all of them. I have different labels for them, so I know what's in all the different deck boxes. So that is under your discretion, is what do you like the deck box. So if you like deck boxes, get yourself a camera bag. That is the best way to do it. Don't just throw them all in a bag. The camera bag keeps them all nice. There's also multiple compartments. So for example, I put in the main like camera area, I put all my decks. I'm usually able to take about 14 decks with me, but there's never a need for 14 decks unless you're going to like a first person. And there should be a tripod holder on the side, which was I used to hold my playmat. Nice thing for playmat, check out Inked Gaming. That's where I always get my playmats. Biggest recommendation. We'll talk about Ultra Pro later. I do like Ultra Pro, but Inked Gaming has always done me really well with my playmats. But aside from that, I also have a token compartment that I put in the front pouch, which is where you can put like lens cleaner and stuff like that. So camera bags, always been the move. I've been using that for the last year. Even when I haven't been playing Magic, when I use Pokemon, I use a camera bag. It is so great. So if you're just getting into it or just trying to figure out different ways to store your things or transport them, that is my best advice, is to use a camera bag. But you might be thinking, what is the best way to store your products, maybe inside of the camera bag or inside of that compartment tray? Well, I personally only use Game Genic. So I do use a couple Ultra Pro things, and I'm not going to say I never do, but Game Genic is always my favorite way to go. I have these 249 plus deck boxes. They fit a full commander deck of sleeves. I also sleeve all my tokens that correspond to the decks and the commander with clear sleeves, just so I can tell them apart. And they all fit perfectly inside of these 249. Actually, I'm thinking of the wrong size. The 100 plus XL side holders. You can also use the top side holders, but as long as they're 100 plus XL, you can fit a whole commander deck inside of them. I'm looking at them right now. They look really nice. I always have at least 3 or 4 just on hand if I ever see a commander deck and want to buy it. I love having just multiple decks, and they fit perfectly inside of my camera bag. But if you're not a huge fan of Game Genic or you can't get your hands on it, Ultra Pro is also really, really good. I actually have the 30th anniversary for Magic. I have that deck box sitting right next to me. It's magnetic. Yes, it was like $35. You can get cheaper deck boxes, but Ultra Pro makes some really good, high quality deck boxes as well if you really want to store some really expensive decks. I have one of my decks that's sitting around $600 right now inside of it, just because it gives it more protection than that plastic Game Genic. But Game Genic also works. I'm not saying it doesn't for those It's just Ultra Pro has that nicer material if you want to spend that extra little amount to try to get that. Next is sleeves. We all need sleeves unless you're crazy enough to play a game and shuffle without any sleeves. If so, I mean, good for you, but I cannot recommend that. So the top 3 brands that I've used is I've used Game Genius sleeves, Ultra Pro katanas, and Dragon Shield. So what I use the most is Dragon Shield. They always work. I always get more than 100, so if I ever crack a sleeve, we're good to go. I've always trusted Dragon Shield. Game Genius, I actually do not like their sleeves. They're a little too thin. They rip easily compared to Dragon Shield. I love Dragon Shield. I'm not a huge fan of the Game Genius. The colors aren't always all the same either. But in the other side of that, the counterpoint, some of the Game Genius sleeves can be really good. It just depends on which kind of set you get. So different factories make different versions of them, so you just got to get lucky, which I feel is not really good for wanting to get sleeves because you want the same thing every time you buy them. But I just started using katanas. So katanas from Ultra Pro are, all my friends say, they slide like butter. And yes, when I go to shuffle, I will sit and just shuffle my katanas because it feels really nice. Your deck isn't like humongous as like maybe a double sleeve deck would give you, and it's still about that 100 card size for the commander. It feels really nice. I think my personal favorite actually now has to go to katana. After using Dragon Shield for so long, I've loved them, but if you can get your hands on katana, now it can't always be the easiest thing because sometimes it's really hard to get, but if you can ever get your hands on those are definitely the best way to go, and in my opinion, the best sleeves to use, mixed with those Game Genius deck boxes. Wrapping up the episode, I just want to let everyone know again about the Murders of the Karloff Manor poster giveaway that I'm running right now on my Instagram. I'll be running the giveaway the entire month of March. My Instagram is at Untapped Mana Show. Check out the post that I posted around last week, which should be March 1st, February 29th. I can't remember the exact date, but it was the post right after the episode that aired last week. So check that out. The deadline to join is March 31st. It'll tell you in the description of the post how to join. The drawing is happening on April 2nd because April 1st is a holiday and I'm not going to be doing anything that day. But on my Instagram bio is also my link tree, which gives access to my YouTube, Apple Podcast page, Spotify page, Moxfield, and all links for Zeke's Comics and Games. Thank you so much again for listening. And I got a question for you today to throw in the comments of this week's Instagram post. What is your favorite brand to sleeve your cards up or transport them? Now remember, never leave any mana untapped. That is, unless you are a blue player. Thank you again to Zeke's Comics Games for sponsoring the episode and the show, and have a great day.